Hey yo YouTube, I am here after a few months to go back to talking about the Brotherhood of the Lion. The last time we left off with them, I believe Nina was talking to her dad where he told her to not be a puppet to the Shire but to manipulate them. So we end up, I think we even time jump a little. But we end up starting this session off where the party's at the spot where they first met, because that's where they tend to camp out. And the Ogier, that apparently his name is Dorath, and Johann end up showing up. So I guess we end up going to speak to the wise ones. Typical stuff. We go over everything that's been going on, I believe. It's actually been 2 weeks since we played, so I'm pretty much going by my notes on memory for the most of it. Uh, but pretty much we get permission to go look at the door with the Ogier. And whenever the Ogier does get to see the door, pretty much he determines it's going to take him a few days to study it. Uh, Most of the party ends up just like camping in front of the structure. Um, I know Onyx Scar goes and does warrior duties, and Rawrite goes to the closest town and just like hangs out at the bar, which I believe is like a day's travel away, if I remember right, without a teleporter. And then Nina and Johan pretty much stay back and watch the Ogier. Um, Nina ends up like reading his books and stuff, and like Johan the whole time just watches quietly. And I think the three, either it's the three books or the three chapters she first looks at are the breaking of the world, the longing, and then there's something about the Sire in there. And I think it's the breaking of the world where it tells a story about Melshire, something about them making a talisman, and one of the stories is something about Melisai's that hid in something called the study, and they researched or they studied teleportation stones, and something about them creating a Kazriel, and they created a Tasmeric ruin that they gave the Ogiers to grow outside their setting. Activated the talisman through chi singing, and they grew the Waygates. Then apparently after 100 years, the light and the way started dimming. So they started fearing walking the ways, and there's something about Majdakin, the Dark Wind, and the Mel Sedai gets blamed for creating the corrupt psyking. And apparently that's the first book. The next books are just Ogars and their interpretation of the symbols. And the last book, it appears to be a journal of an Ogier. But pretty much it's supposed to be like an adventure story where he joins up with an adventuring group and they start using the Waygates for the first time in however long, I guess hundreds of years. And it'll be the first time it's been used in centuries, if not thousands of years. And then eventually, whenever the Ogier goes on break, quits looking, Nina starts badgering him with questions. She asks what the world break is. And he says it's like the age of legends. Great heroes walk the earth. The great king and his companions. And army of soldiers attacked the Lord of the Night, trying to boulder up the sill and try to seal the boar. The boar is the what holds the Lord of the Night in prison. Apparently, the Sire were there, and he did something that ended up corrupting all of the male Sire. And it ended up leading to like mass destruction. Apparently, the Renaissance started hunting down the males. And they mention how there's a thing called where you could take the powers from an Asai, and when it's done to a male, it's called channeling, and when it's done to a female, it's called stealing. Like they kind of make it sound like one's frowned upon and one's not. And for the most part, we do the same thing for another week goes by. Eventually, when we're at lunch again, and Nina starts asking the Ogier questions. The Ogier finally says, like, to be honest with you, no matter how much you study this or look at this, I don't think you're going to be able to grasp it. And he kind of says it's more sorts of the artistic side he doesn't think she'll be able to get. Um, then Johan kind of asks, or I asked the DM, well, does Johan get it? Because Johan's a forger. Uh, and he says, yeah, he kind of understands that, but it's still like mostly it's their race is the reason they're able to do it. And I do know eventually Johan does like say something to Nia like he's been looking at this wall for a week now. Why don't you give him a break? Like I'm sure he doesn't want to talk about it during the times he's not looking. And I think Nina says something like questions could help him out. I was like, yeah, so could burning him out. And like that night, the DM starts doing though. What time does everyone go to bed? Um, Eventually, like whenever Nina goes to sleep, she does the typical where she's in the dreaming world. And she gets up and everyone's transparent. And I guess she starts hearing chimes and everyone wakes up this time. We get up and like the ground's like shifting and I believe he said we fall through it. And the DM says we start flying through the air like Nina does every now and then. Like I said before, it kind of reminds me of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when he's just going through the teleporter thing. So apparently we go towards Fort Tar and past Gale Line Lake, which is supposed to be massive. Eventually we stop seeing civilization. Um, we push through some wall and the air seems very heavy. Feels stagnant, looks barren, and everything we see looks malformed. Start to see like a wilderness. We see people, but they don't look civilized, and it seems scattered. And all of this group, the all the groups together except for Rawrite and Onyx Scar, and and we land, and then the DM notices here's what happened. He's like, "Where's Onyx Guard?" And I was like, "Onyx Guard wasn't here. He was doing warrior duties." Um, so then the DM says that they fly in right after him, and because initially only Johan was seeing this when the DM was describing it. Uh, the moment he says that Onyx Guard are all right, because they're native to this world, they somewhat know the land. I ask. Uh, now that it's Onyx Scar, is this the Barbarian Wilderness, or is this the Savage Lands? And I could tell the DM like he doesn't want to answer it. Like he kind of hesitates, and he goes, "Yeah, this will be about the general direction of the Savage Lands." And we start hearing like laughing. The DM right off the bat makes Onyx Scar roll an intelligence check. If I remember right, he rolls decent and he recognizes them as gnolls. Um, when they get closer or we get closer, we see they're kind of more demonic looking than the average gnoll, even though gnolls are kind of demonic in general. But it's about four or five gnolls and one Flynn. Um, and roll initiative. I would have took better notes for this, but I thought I was going to have my battle map, so I usually remember a lot of going off of that. But pretty much uh, all of these gnolls have spells. Like right off the bat, one of them casts something, and like the ground turns into like sand or something like that. Like it brings down our movement to half, I believe, unless we're walking diagonally. Um, and then like almost all of them are shooting fireballs. I know Onyx Scar immediately starts shooting his bow at the Flynn. Nina and stuff starts casting spells. Johan makes his way to get to one of them. I believe the same thing with the dog heads. Uh, I want to say the Flynn is the last kill, and Onyx eventually kills him with the bow. Like I slowly start moving towards him, but he ends up dying before I get to him. And also, like before the fight ends, like the stuff goes down, and then like a thing of blades come up, and like in front of them was like this big like black onyx stone thing. And the wolf jumper appears and tells Onyx Guard to destroy the big onyx thing. And he hits it. The ground like clears up a little bit, and then we start flying through the air again. And we fly through the air a little bit, and we end up in a room that looks just like the room to the door in Darval, where there's a bunch of statues, except for this one, there's not the Ogier. And Admiral shows up and tells us that Jumper needs to fill us in on things, and says that there's a rising darkness that's filling up in this world. That it's even entering the dreaming world, uh, even apparently making wars there. Um, these gnolls were so vicious in life, apparently all of them were chieftains, that they were able to attack people in their dreams. They had the ability to seduce someone in their dreams, send nightmares to their enemies. And when they died, they became true nightmare lords. You could find these throughout in the dreaming. That and lower nightmare creatures. Um, Admiral ends up telling us that this door isn't one of the more important ones, but the Wemic still need to hold guard here. But he says the more important matter right now is that in the surrounding regions, a kingdom is rising, a kingdom of humanoids, and that the Wemics need to be a part of this. He also said that like there was a time when the Wemics had a place here, and they were the ones that fought off the gnolls or kept the gnolls in control. But since then, the gnolls have kind of taken over. And pretty much he tells us that we got to get in contact with the founder of this council, the Hobgoblin Smite. And immediately, like, Johan's like, you talk about the one that was my replacement? And, um, and he's like, yeah. And then he kind of does this, like, don't interpret this as one of the things where the Titans and the Brotherhood of the Lion always cross paths. Like, because to be honest with you, Smite doesn't consider himself to be a Titan. Um, but we go back and forth a little more about it. But for the most part, that's where we wrap it up. So, next session for us, which is tomorrow, apparently we're going to meet up with some of either Smite or Hyde. Because, yeah, that's what it's because it said even if you get in contact with Hyde, it'll be good enough, his cohort. We've also done our second session of the third campaign, which I'm probably about to record after this. I don't remember if I mentioned it in the last video, but I already have the first session recorded. It's really long, or at least the unedited right now is really long. And for the most part, the first session didn't go that well, if I haven't already mentioned it. So uh, if you haven't checked that out already, because I'll probably release it before this, uh, take a look. And you want to know what happens next, watch my next video and watch everything if you want to know this complicated story. And check you later.